Got it.
So Woody, something that's jumping out at me already is obviously, I mean, I don't know how you want to engage. Do you want us to do something in the chat, or do you want to jump right into the Miro board? Or do you want
the chat? So talk to me now and tell me what's on mind.
One issue I can already see is just that conflict of interest and that trust that you can have. So I would just put trust as you. And then we can expand on that, just simply because there's a lot of noise at the moment in this space. I think one issue, certainly to expand on that point of trust, is farmers are looking at all different options of how they can engage in understanding what their natural capital is. So, you know, that to me, I can see that as being an issue.
And is the issue that the landscape partner organisation, unless it has trust with the farmer, their employee, won't have trust with the farmer? Is that the issue that you identify?
Yeah, essentially, and also just keeping that transparency across the different various options that farmers have in order to engage in this space. Yeah.
Okay. Danny, I saw that you had your hand up earlier. Was it a question or was it a contribution to the co-design? Either way is fine.
Maybe a bit of both.
Yep.
So I just wondered, Wardy, if you could, just to maybe clear things up a little bit, whether or not you could kind of give us the elevator pitch on the value proposition for an LPO, because I think that might kind of clear some things up as far as how landscape partner organisations might run a program such as this and how it might fit into their activities.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. Let me help you to with that. So I think there are three local functions that we need as Regen Farmers Mutual. We need farmer support, we need landscape impact, and we need local transactions done. Now, if I'm an NRM organisation, a land care network, or an independent agronomy group that already has, you know, a farmer network, I've already, you know, if I'm a prime candidate, I've already got an existing local network of farmers. I'm, you know, interested in how I can support peer-to-peer compliance within transactions. I'll be interested as a landscape organisation in how the environmental impacts will flow into the management decisions of each of those farmers, and vice versa, you know, what the farmers are doing, making sure that flows into the transaction considerations. But the reasons I'll do that is there is long dated income streams associated with this carbon. Now, if I'm a land care group or an NRM, I'm pretty much living election cycle to grant cycle, election cycle to grant cycle, actually being able to support farmers in these local transactions, in these landscape scale transactions, has the ability to align my income and fee services and maybe revenue share with that of my farmers to provide them local support, to coordinate them into landscape scale impact, and to help them through the local transactions. I could expect to receive up to 10% of the local farmer's income coming into my NRM, coming into my land care organisation to support those farmers through the transactions, to coordinate that landscape scale impact, and through fees for service in providing the landscape agronomy. Now, we obviously want you to be appropriately insured and have good government and procurement processes and expertise in order to do those sorts of things. But the reason that you'd want to do it is because it's aligned with farmers. You know, we're about the only one that you can put your trust in, because we are 100% aligned with farmers. everybody else coming to your NRMs or to your land care groups, they're not behind the farmer, they're behind the transaction, and they're trying to recruit farmers in to a transaction, which means, you know, they'll do the sales job of pulling numbers into their transaction. What we want to actually do, as we've said in our landscape agronomy, is we actually want them as farmers to be making these as proactive decisions to enter into environmental transactions because it supports their farm plan. Yeah, because collectively they can make a bigger impact to get a second income. And as the landscape partner organization, your role is to help those farmers to achieve those sorts of outcomes through farmer support, landscape impact, and local transactions. That's the elevator pitch, Danny. I don't know if that's helpful. Was that helpful for anyone? Okay, Mike and Helen, hands up.
Yeah, hi, this is Helen. I just got just some items that we could add to this particular section we're talking about.
Yep, great.
So the first issue, one of the issues that we're seeing is that if you already have a relationship with the current agronomist and you get a landscape agronomist to do your measurement, there's a third-party measurement issue. So how do we traverse that area? Do you want me to pause?
No, this is great.
Going?
Yeah.
Second one is that there are some organisations that have existing requirements for their current employees around allowing them to work in the similar fields or not allowing them. So those competing agendas, not so much agendas. So I suppose what would, for example, there's a couple of land care groups in New South Wales that aren't allowed, so their coordinators aren't allowed to work in this particular field or area. So is there something that we can help manage that process, or what is it that we can work with that, how we can work with that? The third one is insurance is quite prohibitive for contractors. So is there a way that we can work on a large scale insurance product? I know that Landcare New South Wales offers that. So is that something that the RFM is looking at? And then this is probably, I think you alluded to it earlier, Wardy, around travel costs and contracted travel costs as opposed to employee travel costs and how that being reimbursed, because that's probably one of the big issues arising right now, particularly with all these increased costs.
So costs for third parties and travel costs generally. So just to help unpack a few of those, one of the questions that has come through from landscape agronomists has been, if I can't do something for the farmer, dig up a soil core or do a transect or run through a particular thing, and I get that the farmer needs this in order to progress, am I connecting that farmer directly to a third party, and is that third party billing the farmer? Or is my responsibility as the landscape agronomist to get that third party to bill me, and then I bill the farmer, but it's my job to coordinate those resources? Now, am I, those sorts of questions are already, solved for independent contract. Well, they're on the table for independent contractors and subcontractors. But how does an NRM organization or a land care organization deal with those issues currently? And what can we learn from you guys with respect to designing Regen Farmers Mutual so that we avoid some of those pitfalls or pick up some of those opportunities from the way that you do things? So maybe at this point, I'll ask some of the land care facilitators and NRM organisation CEOs what their thoughts are in respect to that third-party service provider? Should it be direct between the third-party service provider and the farmer, or should it be coordinated through that landscape agronomist? And if that landscape agronomist is to coordinate it, are they to pick up some margin in there? You know, what's healthy, what works, what's in practice at the moment? Paul McDonald, I might run to you as South Queensland Landscapes as a first example, and then we'll go around the circle.
No worries, Andrew. And I guess I flagged this by saying that the other NRMs across, particularly New South Wales, Victoria, are statutory bodies, whereas we're companies limited by guarantees. So
Yep.
we have a joint scheme across our 12 NRM groups in Queensland to cover all our insurances and all those sort of things. So we don't need much coordination from that point of view. We do this sort of business all the time for different purposes. So I wouldn't see us needing to have to work or coordinate through anyone else to do our part of this, apart from needing some sort of solid mechanism for collaboration, so that there are no surprises for each other. We obviously offer a suite of landscape-based services, being that's what we exist for. So it'd be a matter of negotiating with the landscape agronomist as to how all that fits together. So that's pretty much how I'd see it in our part of the world. I suspect Burnett Mary Regional Group around the Gympie area won't be a lot different.
That's great to hear about the joint transactions for insurance and that you've got all of the skill sets. So in Southern Queensland Landscapes, I'll just go to an exact example. If you needed someone to fly a drone or drill a soil core, at the moment you would have staff on your payroll who could fly a drone or drill a soil core?
And we have a quorum, yeah. So that's not a great issue for us. We're happy to partner with anyone too, because obviously we're fit for purpose and capacity. So as if we're growing this sort of business, we're more than happy to partner. But at this stage, yeah, just about all the landscape service skill sets we carry.
Brilliant. Okay. Andrew McLean, love to get your input here. I can see you've written some message stuff, but if you could verbalize, that'd be great.
I'm not quite sure what question I'm answering here, Woody, but I'll expand on my point here. I mean, we're sort of at the early. It's like we're just starting to date. And there's this gorgeous looking character called the Regen Farmers Mutual that's got an elevator pitch in a very tall building, and yeah, from a Landcare perspective, our Landcare networks, Danny knows all about this, but our Landcare networks will look upon the Regen Farmers Mutual and need to be convinced about your bona fides, and will make their own judgments in their own context about whether you're a mob that they want to work with. But the presumption also is that there's a trusting relationship between the candidate LPOs, as we're calling them now, and the farmers, and I think that again would vary widely. Of course, in Landcare, that's a really primary mission of Landcare is to build trusting relationships between landholders, farmers in this context, in a particular district or region, and I think Landcare succeeds in that to a greater or lesser extent, but sometimes it's to a lesser extent, and we have to acknowledge that. And finally, rather than talk all morning, I might compare the capacity of the Landcare sector in Victoria to what we just heard from Paul in SQ Landscapes. Not many Landcare networks would employ people that you would call landscape agronomists. They employ facilitators and they employ organisers and people to organise field days and stuff like that. And some of them are great, but they don't consistently have that capacity on deck. So that's a limitation, I think, in in that sense, and they won't be able, because of their own financial position, to get, no matter what the 10% deal is, unless they've got a level of certainty about the cash flow that would come from that, they're going to be reluctant to make a commitment to partner. So that's an issue that needs to be overcome. So I think Landcare offers at least the potential for that trusting landholder network, but there's certainly some implementation barriers that we'd need to confront in terms of their disposition towards the whole scheme, and their questions about the deal. So I'll go back onto mute.
Thank you, Andrew. I think there's some really great points that you brought in there, and I'll just talk to one of them while we're here. So this idea is that a landscape partner organisation, we need them to do 3 functions, right? Farmer support, landscape impact, and local transactions. And it sounds to me like someone like Southern Queensland Landscapes might be able to do all 3 of these functions. But somewhere like a Landcare network in Victoria might be able to do the landscape impact stuff, but might not be able to do local transactions or farmer support. And that there will be other landscape partner organisations, independent agronomy groups, for example, that might be able to do farmer support and might be able to provide some support to local transactions or third party, but can't do them all. So there will be landscape partner organisations, or you could imagine in a region, there might be a landscape partner organisation and several key relationships that they have in order to be able to fulfill all 3 functions. Now, for each of the functions, just to be really specific about it, for the landscape agronomy function, that is fairly simple. The farmer's going to pay fees for services for the different services they get from their landscape agronomists. So that starts as a business model where we bring members through marketing in your region to the point where they're now going to get Part A's, Part B's and farm plans. The second income is this landscape scale impact income. And that's a transaction, a large scale transaction. They're going to look like multi-million-dollar, multi-actor, multi-factor transactions. And for there's 25-year trail plus, and it scales over time that the landscape partner organisation gets when they are engaged in that landscape scale activity. Not every landscape partner organisation might be engaged in that.
Can we stop there to talk to Andrew's point? So leave the diagram up because it'll be useful. But so within that landscape impact transaction flow, there's going to be different kind of services required. And to Andrew's point about the expertise within Landcare, we've made, along the way, we've made some assumptions that Landcare groups may be able to provide some of those services. So just want to explore that. So, for example, at the end, once a transaction is completed, we've kind of got this sense that there's a need for that monitoring, measurement, verification, reporting process. So, and that may well benefit from having a third party, kind of someone that was independent from the actual transaction process, providing that ongoing kind of interaction with the transaction, if you like. So that may be somewhere where, if Landcare is not involved in the transaction kind of structuring, if you like, if it's arranging and coordinating farmers, it may then be the kind of the right be able to provide that service, assuming we're able to kind of train people up to do that whatever is required in terms of that process. But so I guess what I wanted to try and kind of explore was like, if we broke down the kind of the roles a bit deeper, do we then start understanding, well, where do the expertise lie, and is there part of that expertise that Landcare can fill?
It occurs to me, Rowan, that it could be that if there's a contractual arrangement with landscape agronomists, it could be coordinated through the Landcare network. Those sorts of things could be made to happen. But I still think there's some conservatism, quite natural conservatism in these small groups with limited resources. So we need to address that. And while I'm babbling on, there is a little box that says quick diagram creation that I can see that's really bothering me. Is that necessary?
Yeah, here, let's get that off.
Good, thanks. I'll go on mute now. My work here is done.
I found that annoying as well. So the landscape, so from a Landcare perspective, if we're hearing that right, that Landcare groups might typically be more about the coordination and may or may not, just depending on the specifics, they may or may not have individuals who are able to actually provide that landscape agronomy kind of service if it's technically based. Is that a way of summarising what you said, Andrew?
Yes, I think I am. Yes. But that would be true for all of your partners, really. I mean, Paul's capacity with Southern Queensland Landscapes is pretty substantial, but as some of you know, I was with Southern Gulf NRM, which is a counterpart now. We would have had much more limited capacity in that space as well. So it'll vary. All right.
Great. I've got Ro Oldenhall. Ro, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Sorry. I've just got the bub with me, so I'm not on the video. But I just wanted to for context for others, I come to this from an environmental accounting kind of perspective, and I was fortunate enough to sit in with the Regen Farmers Mutual an inaugural landscape agronomist muster, was it last week, Wardy, which was really good. I guess so a lot of that session, it seemed to me the focus was around sort of the landscape agronomy role in sort of marketing and sort of sales for the Regen Farmers Mutual, if you like. And I guess I sort of wondered whether that role was going to be reflected again kind of in the landscape partner organisations and how that would sort of work. And I think touching on Rowan's point as well around if there's a role for someone and how it would work in terms of doing that verification, because if you've got landscape agronomists who are essentially selling a product but also doing the assessments, then they've kind of got potentially a conflict of interest there around if the farmers that they're working with are kind of actually producing the environmental services that they say they are, if you know what I mean. That there's a kind of, sorry, I've got this baby with me, but I just wonder if there's a role potentially for a landscape partner organisation or for other kind of consultants or whatever in that verification kind of role, to give that kind of assurance to the buyers, I suppose, that the people who are verifying are sort of not also the same ones as the ones selling, if you know what I mean, and how that kind of all works. I'll go on mute now so that you don't have to listen to the baby in the background, but just want to raise that point.
Thank you, Ro. That's a great point. It's often a source of being the policeman and the promoter simultaneously is hard for a organization. And so we do want to have credible organizations and credible measurement, verification and reporting. So that's a legitimate point. Peter, your point, your question.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew and Rowan. I guess I'm coming from a similar base with Andrew in trying to understand what's going on and how we fit into this relationship at the moment. Thank you for the speed dating, Andrew. I thought that was pretty good. We are mobilising kind of at a national level through all of our networks. So I think your relationship with us at the moment is through the NLN, correct me if I'm wrong, and that's an MOU. And so this is my introduction to this whole, this program that you're putting forward. Kind of at a state level, we're being approached by a number of other organisations. This is evolving quite rapidly, and you've got I like the way that you've presented this, and there is a good relationship to farmers, and in some ways a good level of trust that our networks will require to come on board. There was just a comment from Ro about the conflict of interest. I think that's very real. There are a number of competing organisations at our level, whether it be state or sub-regional or whatever regional. So we need to really look closely at that in terms of what our capacity is to deliver parts of the three components, and who else is going to be the other person who rolls that out. So for instance, if somebody else that's a competitor is rolling out our component, who owns that intellectual property of those people that we're putting forward? I guess one of our strengths is that we have a massive network of people on the ground that can be mobilised for creating social change, and it's about to happen whether we like it or not. Because we're grassroots based, we're not a government or quasi-government entity. That's where people find trust in us. So that might have waned a bit in the last 10, 15 years because of various reasons, or other people kind of moving into that space, but we still have a lot of trust. And I think that's been one of the key things from the beginning, that we can facilitate that. The last part, I think, is that we're basically commodifying stuff that we're already doing. So we do this stuff every day, and people come to us because they want to do better things for their property. So I guess we need to look at how our capacity can be either increased to facilitate various parts of those three components, or upskilling, or finding that third party that complements what we're already doing. So our strategy, whether this came along or not, is already happening towards this. And each of our states, there's a couple of us here today, we have our own strategies about what you're doing anyway. We call it something different. So I think for us to go forward, we'll be going to our boards and our members' council representatives to see how this fits. And if it does fit, then, which I think it's got a fair chance of fitting, then yeah, we'll be pretty keen to pursue it. But there's still things that need to be worked out. And yeah. So, I mean, the last part, I guess, is just that it is happening. It's rolling out very rapidly at a national and international level. And our farmers, I think that was my last, I just wanted to know, is it just farmers? Because we have collectives of, we look in catchment scale, and it's not, we need more than farmers if we're going to go catchment and landscape scale, because we have, 9,000 covenant holders in Tasmania who own massive tracts of land that join farming properties together, and they already work pretty well together with us. We're the conduit between conservation and production, as you know. So if we're going to go down, they're already coming to us because they want to know how to be part of it, and they're feeling a bit confused by some of the commercial mobs that are coming in and saying, hey, we'll just own everything and we'll give you 2%, and you can do all the work, and then we'll own everything after that. So I know that's a lot in a nutshell, but I actually have to go. That's why I'm waving to my staff in the background saying I'll be 2 more minutes. But they're my points, and if you can, hopefully that builds on what Andrew said and what other people might be thinking.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your time. I would just say that, today we didn't come with the idea of convincing anybody to become landscape partner organisations. This process that we're an hour and a bit through was designed to co-design with you the sorts of agreements and the sorts of issues our agreements will need to cover off in order for us to get relationships that function at those 3 levels locally. So if it isn't for your organization, that's okay. What I'm wanting to hear, which was great, well, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities and what do we need to think about through co-design so that we are the best or the most natural or the easiest or the most defensible choice when you come to make choices about how you align your resources each year, you know. So thank you, Peter. Danny, you've got your hand up, and then I'm going to suggest that we do another process so that we can actually get some value out of this co-design session. Go for it, Danny.
Thanks, Wardy. Just a few things. So I just put my my LPLN hat back on just for a moment. And a few things here that have come up for me. So one thing that I think we've established, but it's going to be very important, is Landcare networks, particularly in Australia, Victoria, and also across the country, we know differ in their structure. And so that's going to be a really important thing to get right as far as what model fits what landscape partner organisation. And the relationship is going to change for Landcare in Victoria depending on what that structure might be. So I think some networks and some groups we'll find might be really interested in this, but they won't actually have the structure or the governance behind them to be able to do that. So yeah, I think that's something that we probably need to dive into and see where all of that kind of fits and where it all falls. The other thing that has come to me, or that I've noted, is these organisations are really going to need to see an opportunity to provide added capacity into their organisation, and then be able to assess, who might be able to do that, or who they would need to bring in, or how that can add to someone's position moving forward, particularly in a long term. And to do that, they would need to see some kind of business model around that. So something that creates the work, but also where knowledge fits in, where training fits in, and where they can kind of add to community outcomes or community priorities. So perhaps we need to kind of open the veil a little bit more, or do a little bit more work there for these partner organisations to understand that. I think a key to that is being able to assist networks and organisations to build and develop landscape projects that can contribute to what they're doing, so what sits in their own strategies, but also that kind of fit with community priorities in those. They're all kind of individual community models, so we need to understand that those community priorities are going to be different, and how can a partner organisation bring something like this in that's going to provide, an added opportunity for a long-term project that they might be working on a landscape scale. And I think often there, if we are looking to kind of partner with, with organisations like this, often we know that there are generally maybe 2 or 3 really strong networks in the region. And as far as kind of moving to a capacity model, that they might be the networks or the organisations that could take something like this up, but then be that conduit back down into those other groups, or like on a regional scale into those other Landcare facilitators that might not be set up to be able to do that in a kind of more, readily type of fashion, or might not have the skills and the capacity to be able to do that. The other thing I wanted to add is just so I gave a presentation as part of a series not that long ago, and it's all feedback is starting to come in now, but it is very clear that there were some of these commercial organisations or companies that presented before I did as part of Regen Farmers Mutual, and overwhelmingly farmers, particularly in that kind of Landcare kind of space, are calling me rather than them. So they do see the value in it. It is just about opening that up, I think, and being able to provide the landscape partner organisations with the confidence and the knowledge that that they can kind of talk to that in order to kind of gain that trust.
Thank you, Danny. Mike, can you be brief?
Yeah, I can be. I've just, as a farmer that's been involved in land care groups for some time and natural resource management through our sort of Northwest Catchment Management Committee, and then working with that out at the Murray-Darling Basin level, I've had this seen a broad example of all of this working, and I'm seeing in the conversation that there are areas of sort of responsibility or areas where potential conflicts are that we just need to actually define out separately, because the local land care group, very much a group of farmers, and very interested, when we started our local group, very interested in expanding our efforts to sort of more across farm improvement in our landscape. And that was helped by the local coordinators. One of the challenges for the local farmers was that the coordinators were usually on a short-term contract, and that was related to state government funding. So now we've got an interaction between the local requirements and the state government sort of funding requirements. One of the roles that I think, because these land care partner organisations can be any number of people, but one of the issues where we moved from individual farm action to larger catchment impact or landscape impact is with the catchment plans or the broader plans that have been done. And I've seen these things be done for 20 years. Just right here in our local land care group, there was a catchment plan done for Cucumber Creek because it was a contributor of high salt. That sat on somebody's shelf gathering dust for 20 plus years now, and we haven't got access to it. So one of the roles that the mutual could play is to have access to, because they've all been funded with government funds, either be it state or federal funds. And so they are really a community asset, and whoever the local partners are just need access to it. And, that's one of the real advantages I've seen in the mutual, is that we have the capacity through, involvement with NRM groups and land care groups, but also with the smart contract end of this, to really move from individual farm impact to now a landscape and catchment impact. I think that's the real magic in what the mutual can do. We just have to get through these conflicts of interest and roadblocks that are naturally in there because of the different relationships of each of the entities. The land care groups, very local, very farmer focused. The coordinators working for those groups, but on short-term government contracts, so difficult to get longevity. Sometimes difficult to get access to broader catchment plans and stuff that governments have invested in over the last 30 years. So I think defining each of those groupings and the local areas of interest will help in the design of the contracts. The contracts are going to have to be very nimble and able to be designed to whichever partner organisation we might be dealing with.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Mike. All right, everyone, we're going to do some co-design. For those that have, just a quick show of hands again. Andrew McLean, you haven't used Miro. Anybody else in Andrew's situation hasn't used Miro? Andrew and Richard and Holly and Ellie. Okay, let me introduce you to Miro. So the first thing I'm going to do is put into the link, into our chat rather, a copy of a link that will take you to a Miro board. Now, if you all can jump into the Miro board, and I'm going to pull you to a specific area. Okay, so you're going to come to me. As people are coming in, I can see Stefan's there. Brilliant.
I don't seem to have the link, sorry.
Yeah, I can't see the link either.
In the chat? Oh, I know what happened.
There it is.
Send it to
Everyone in
me, Woody.
meeting.
Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you.
There we go. My apologies, everyone. So area that we're going to go to, I'll share screen so that you can see. Below we've got a big lot of people up in the top left. If you scroll to the bottom, we're going to go to this 5 groups times 10 minutes area. Can you see where I am? Stefan, you're in the right area. Verity, if you're unable to get here, that's okay. We'll talk you through it. What we're going to do, Rowan, you might want to prepare this in the background, is we're going to split up into 5 sort of groups. Now, one group is going to look at the issues around engage. Another group is going to look at the define. Another issue is going to look at market. Another group's going to look at execute. And another group's going to look at the issues related to deliver. You'll be randomly assigned to these groups, right? And it's okay, because we're just going to try and capture for each of these groups. Around engagement, we just had a heap of very good stuff, you know, engagement by scale, engagement by scope, engagement by the right people, fear, trust, uncertainty, doubt, all of those things are going to come up. The other issues for engagement are going to be around service organizations. So how do you work with third parties and how do they work with the farmers? The other issue around engagement is going to be around territories. Who looks after what area for which function? And then the last one is going to be this policeman or promoter paradox. When you're engaging, are you the policeman or are you the promoter? You're probably the promoter. Is it going to lose trust when you turn up as the policeman? Do you need to put that into your considerations around who provides services to the LPO? So everybody who gets put into the engagement team, these are your 4 boards. Prime LPO, service organizations to LPOs, territory, policeman and promoter. Anybody who goes into define, you're going to be looking at transaction support. What does that look like? You're also going to be looking at landscape impact. What does defining around landscape impact look like? You're also then going to look around the data sharing network. How do we resolve Mike's issue then, which is we've got a heap of data, a heap of network of previous information. How do we connect the landscape agronomists and the farmers and the landscape impacts to that existing data? And then you're also going to work on flow on privacy and data impacts on agreements. So if we've got an agreement with a third party to do something, how do we make sure that they're properly catered for? Marketing. What does it mean? What are the issues about representing Regen Farmers Mutual to farmers? What brand key personnel agreements need to be in place? What are the PR and sales KPIs, responsibilities? In the execute and deliver, you've only got 2 boxes. For risk management and legal liabilities on execute, and for working with landscape agronomies and audit independence when it comes to deliver. So you're going to be split into one of these groups of 5. You're going to have either 2 boards or 4 boards. And what I want you to do is use your post-it notes to define the issues or make comments that come to you in relation to your segment, okay? You can navigate anywhere on the board, but I'd like you to stay within your groups and discuss those 2 or 4 slides within your group. Is that okay? Rowan, are you looking good?
I think so. So it's rooms 1 to 5,
Yep.
going left to right. So if you're in room 1, you do
Engage.
engage. Okay. So I think this will work. There's a couple of people with rooms, a couple of rooms with only 2 people in it now, but see how we go.
All right. And you'll get 20 minutes, 10 minutes to work on this, and then we'll come back and review. Okay.
Kate will assign you to, once I do it. Come on. Room 3, you can join.
Helen and Mike, do you want to jump in with Verity?
Yep. And let's just put Kate in room 5, I reckon. There we go.
Okay, Ray. Do you want to jump in with Christy? Is Ray there or is he frozen?
Looks frozen.
We need to go into each of the rooms, make sure that they're all okay to go.
I really don't know what the task is, mate.
Mate, but this is a clusterfuck.
Well, good learning. I think it helps to have both of us kind of co-design these things beforehand. Sorry.
So much so. I thought we would have had some time, but no, I was so late in producing it.
That's all right. That's all right.
It's too much, not enough. Like we just need to give them specific things to do. Yeah. Anyway,
right.
I'll jump in and see if I can be useful because there'll be people that are pulling the fucking plugs out here. So I'll go into room 1.
Each of these boards is a step, and you're asking them questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. All right. I'll just go and visit.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I'm going to join room 1. I've been in room 1 and 2. They're both good. I'm going over to room 3 with Mike and Verity. right. Oh. What's going on? Yeah, you're back.
I'm on the phone. On the phone. Dropped out for some reason.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, just missed out on that, Mike. It was going to be that secret answer that we were going.
Isn't it always the last 10 seconds are the most useful 10 seconds of a 10-minute breakout session? Yeah.
Yeah, we were
Sorry
just
about that.
stuck in.
Look, I need to apologize. I should have been doing more of this group style co-design from the beginning. We got an hour and a half through before we did this, so that's my bad as a facilitator. However, I've been watching the Miro board and visiting each of the groups. Some of these groups have absolutely shot forward and advanced the thinking in their area. So I might start with the Engage group. And Amy, were you being the scribe for them, or was Engage?
Yeah.
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 And talking through what you discovered were issues, comments that people had in relation to those 4 boards.
Yeah, look, we had great discussions, and certainly in terms of, let me just move where I am on the Miro board. Hang on a second. Yeah, just understanding, engaging your local and existing network. We had great discussions around that, and I guess just the issues surrounding, you know, some of these organisations, it's going to be very bespoke. You know, how that looks to, you know, depending on the organisation and the farmers and the network and you know, really where that's at. Territories as well, we discussed that at length, just, you know, obviously the importance of having a pilot scheme in each of the territories just to demonstrate best practice and what that looks like, and ensuring that there's an example so that, you know, it really is clear to farmers and to organisations the expectation and where that can go. And also understanding just the different relationships and, you know, ones that are existing are ones that, you know, the end goal of who we want to form those relationships with those third parties is super important, especially with stakeholders. And then obviously identifying, you know, just the boundaries of these territories and depending on the landscape and organisations involved and what that looks like in terms of you know, who looks after what territory and how that actually looks.
So
And then-
just to confirm with you, Amy, are you talking about geophysical boundaries? Like where does Western Murray Land Improvement Group and Murray LLS operate? And you're talking about boundaries around functions, who's doing the
Yeah.
farmer support, who's doing the landscape impact, who's doing the transaction.
Both, absolutely. I mean, we probably talked about it a little bit more in terms of physical boundaries, but certainly in terms of those different relationships within what each organisation is doing is very important to have a clear understanding and that transparency. We did discuss too, and obviously we'd like Verity to talk to this a little bit as well, just about that bespoke idea and look at the contracts and how that would look with different organisations and how, you know, can that be a self-designed process, or is that something that the mutual can certainly get involved in designing? And then we went into obviously police officer versus the promoter and what that looks like. And again, we really discuss that it's a bit of a comms piece, and certainly with the farmer and with the landscape agronomist, and you know, at all points and different stages of the process, whether you're a promoter or a police officer, and talking about that verification process will certainly depend on where you're at in that process. So, you know, we talked to, you know, really feeling the comms piece and just keeping that, you know, very open as to where it's at.
All right. Thank you very much, Amy. Was it Stephen and crew who were doing the define piece? Was that right, Stephen? Can I ask you to be scribe? Stefan, sorry.
So Stefan, I was with the execute piece actually.
Oh, who are the
Yeah.
define people? Sorry.
Well, could have been us, Woody, but we weren't really clear. So, but I think that is where we were focused with our conversation. So I was with Kate Forrest and Ray Lord.
I think you guys were the last lot, weren't you, on working with landscape agronomy and independent audit?
That was the piece we were. We basically went real high level.
Yeah.
I think we have the golden thread. So we went big picture. So you had two. So Kate Forrest. It's so we were talking about how, you know, the scale issue really came up in the conversation. So I can speak to you let us know. But really, I guess it was around the differences in the LPOs and how that context changes, so that the contracts would need to be really simple or bespoke, I think was one of the main kind of perhaps takeaways from our conversation. But it also, we did skew off into PR and sales, and Ray, you know, there was this really big piece about what is being done here is so unique in that it covers off on not just one aspect of the environmental market space, and that somehow capturing that those unintended consequences for regions and landscapes when you just focus on soil carbon or you just focus on standing carbon, and how that might, there's those unintended consequences around what that might mean for communities that aren't being considered, for example, increasing fire risk and things like that. But I do think one of the things that the main thing was, and the other piece was around really what part of this transaction flow could a landscape partner organisation fit with? It may not be the whole end to end, it may not be all of those things. So where do these different landscape organisations have strengths in certain places, and what does that mean for you contractually too? So I guess it sort of drives down to this really diverse landscape of landscape partner organisations. How do you design contracts that may be flexible but simple? Because it is, the other piece is how noisy this space is, how many other operators are out there knocking on these exact same organisations' doors, and at the end of the day, it's the farmer that needs to make the decision. Yeah, so we covered across the whole board, I think. Very big picture, sorry.
All right, market, that was definitely, was that Verity and Mike and Helen? Will one of you please talk to that? And you've got a minute.
This was a big one. Hang on, I've just got to go back to the screen. Verity, you can jump into, I think you can just all speak on this together. So representation, we probably were looking at who our audience is going to be here. And so we've sort of smashed all those in, like corporates, farmers, the organisations. And then we looked at what are the particular main things around transparency, disclosures, and be aware of claims. And the big impacts, the big picture impacts of farms rather than just single issue targets. So that was the thing that we spoke on representation.
Probably in that representation as well, the cross representation of brands. So if a landscape partner organisation is on the farm with a landscape agronomist, they are really working for the mutual and the farmers. And at the other end of it, the mutual may be wishing to disclose to impact partners that we have all of these different branded local partner organisations, so that the ability to utilise each other's name and branding.
Yep.
Yeah.
So just with then going to key personnel agreements, we sort of Verity did an awesome job of just going through what those agreements need to look like. And then the PR and sales KPIs, we sort of just threw those also time to delivery, number of hectares under management, number of farmers by location, the biodiversity carbon water credits under management, total dollar to farmers for landscape impact. So there's a whole heap of work around all of those sort of KPIs, and looking around what does success look like for our RFM, and that was probably, I'm aware of time, so that's probably enough from us. Thanks, Woody.
That's perfect. Thank you, Helen, and thank you for being aware of time. So Paul, Holly, and your group that looked at the execute, and you were looking at risk management and legal liabilities, I think. Holly, can you talk for your group, or Paul?
I think Paul just had to leave.
Yeah,
I'm going to have to go in a moment too, so maybe Holly.
yeah. Well, you've got 1 minute, and then we'll call it close.
I'm not
Right.
fantastic with Miro, but I'll give it a crack. If we can you just zoom in a bit, Wardy? Sorry, my other one's not working. So we talked a little bit about the 3 different levels that we would have an issue with in that execute. Now I've lost everything. Execute phase. So we're looking at how that goes with landholders, how that goes with the local partner organisations, and then RFM. We didn't quite make it to what that risk management issue was around RFM, so that we can come back to that one. But I guess we looked at a bunch of different things, like those long-term commitments that are expected through this process, ensuring those long-term risks and implications are understood and acceptable. What's that data sovereignty for landholders, and how do we make sure that we consider that the integrities of the credits, the integrity of the credits that we are, I guess, developing, and then what happens when those properties sort of change hands, navigating additionality, that sort of stuff, and then at that LPO level, we sort of talked about what those long-term commitments or sustaining resources is likely to be, how we can maintain that continuity if staff changes, if staff changes in those relationships that are built over time between landholders and groups, making the most of those opportunities in the business models. And then if we just probably have off on that one enough. So if we just go down to the legal liabilities, we talked about, I guess, some of those long-term commitments, again, IP issues with data, additionality issues, changing government policies. We didn't spend a huge amount of time on that component of the discussion. We sort of focused more on that risk management side of things, Wardy. So I guess that's really a really quick rundown.
I think that is perfect. I know that I told you all 9:30 to 11:30, and we've breezed through 11:30. I want to say thank you. We actually did get to the place that I hoped we'd get to at the end, and there is actually a lot of good feedback on that Miro board that we can take forward into the contracts. So I won't hold you up any further, but I would like to say thank you so much for your time and your contribution today. Thank you for putting up with some poor facilitation. Promise we'll be better and better than ever next time. So thank you very much, everyone. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.